Well, there we are. How you doing? I'm glad you're able to make it today. I know it's lunchtime for many, and I appreciate you checking in for a little bit today. It's funny how getting ready for this little podcast that we tape on Thursdays. Whenever you do any kind of public speaking, you get so cranked up before you're gonna talk, and I used to do a lot of public speaking when I worked at Hyles Anderson College and worked in the ministries at First Baptist for got to do a lot of public speaking. And I remember getting just really cranked up. You just get excited. It's funny how that translates even to a scenario like this where we're doing a podcast live. So I appreciate that. And thanks for taking some time to come and visit with me today. If you're just joining us, this is, I'm calling this podcast that we'll be doing on Thursdays, I'm calling it Tears to Wells, based on a truth that God gave me years ago as a young man, struggling with a difficult season that came to life, a loss of a job, and that triggered just a lot of bad emotions, a lot of bad memories of loss in my life. And the Lord gave me a verse, Psalm 84:6, and the verse goes something like this: who passing through the valley of Baca, or the valley of tears, make it a well. And so the Lord kind of shared with me that concept of we cry and we shed tears to make wells to help others and inspire others. And I hope I can do that with this podcast. For the first few weeks, I'll probably be doing a lot of just sharing my journey on recovery from grief. And but hopefully I could get others to come on the podcast. And today we're going to be looking at creating or recapturing an identity after loss or trauma. That's what we're going to be looking at today. Recouping our identity after a trauma. As I get into the material today, if you're joining me here as I do this live and you want to check in and just maybe share your story of recovering from a loss of identity and how you got through that, I'm sure others that read through the comments would love to hear that. So I don't know if I'll be able to address all the comments, but again, if you hear something that resonates and you want to chime in, feel free, and I'll go back and I'll read those and actually put my 2 cents in. But I had no idea how difficult losing an identity was. I lost my wife back in December, but even prior to that, I had been experiencing some major losses of identity and dealing with each one of those. And I was in the middle of dealing with those and then got hit with the loss of my wife. But I was a Bible college teacher for 20 years. And I just felt the Lord leading me in a different direction. And in 2016, resigned as a teacher for 20 years. And I had no idea the first several months how that loss of identity really, really affected me. Shortly after I left that job, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and then looking for the best treatment options, we felt like moving down here to Indianapolis for clinical trial would be the best option. So we moved down here to Indianapolis, and again, another identity loss. I'd lived in Northwest Indiana, Chicago area for over 40 years. And so I was going from the region here to Indianapolis, and again, just struggled with, who am I? Just that identity loss. And then definitely when I lost my wife in December, you go from being a husband, a partner, a confidant, having somebody at your side. People look at you differently when you're married. You're in the club, so to speak, and you lose your spouse, and you go from having this to now just being a widower, a single father. These are things that, again, are new identities that are given to you, a lot of them without asking, and you're struggling again to find out, who am I as a person? What am I doing? And I think that happens after every loss, not just the loss of a spouse like that. I'm thinking of folks who've gone through a divorce. You go through a crisis of identity. Who am I now without this person? I'm a divorced person now. Those who have struggled with some type of abuse where something is taken away from you. Maybe maybe it's a violent, traumatic act, and your innocence is taken away from you. The loss of your innocence. Who am I now after this traumatic event? So I think identity is something that after we lose something, after we go through a traumatic event, we all struggle to really get a hold of who our identity is. And identities are so important to us because they give us security. We find great security in our identities. And so that's why as human beings, we work so hard to kind of get an understanding of who we are. Because first of all, when you have a good identity, it gives you direction. It gives you a sense of purpose. This is where I'm going. It helps you establish that direction. As human beings, we are scared. We are frightful of the unpredictable, of the unknown, and we try to control as many knowns as we can. And when we have an identity, it gives us a sense of direction. Not only that, but this is probably even more important than a sense of direction. What our identities do is they also give us a sense of adding value. Do you know that right now we're struggling with this COVID season, and suicide rates are just off the charts, all kinds of depression and so forth, all these crazy things. But one of the things one of the reasons why people can hold on, even in their darkest valleys, if they feel like they're adding value, if they're contributing to a family, if they're contributing to an organization, if they're contributing to something, if they're adding value, it seems like they can weather even the most difficult storms. And that's why our identities are so important to us, because our identity gives us direction, but even more importantly, to some degree, it gives us a sense that we're adding value. And quite frankly, that's one of the things that I've struggled with in the last couple of years, is figuring out where I was adding value. And even now, where am I adding value? What's the place or who's the person I can become where I add the most value? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to, before we go into creating a new identity or recapturing a lost identity, I want to say, be careful of not making your loss your new identity. And again, these are all just suggestions. I am by no means an expert, and we've got a few people checking in. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, I mentioned as we do this podcast, if you want to chime in with your own little story of identity crisis and how you recovered, feel free to jot down some things that helped you. But I mentioned, be careful of not making your loss your new identity. I am a widower right now, and I'm just being frank and transparent. It hurts for me to say that. I don't feel comfortable saying that. But that's not the identity I want to take on. I don't want to be known as the widower, the man up the street that without. I don't want to be known by my loss. Growing up in an abusive home, you lose so much. So much is taken away from you. Your dignity, your self-esteem. So many things are taken away from you in an abusive situation. But the last thing I think you want to do is make that loss your identity. Definitely don't want to bring on the role or the identity of a victim. That to me, that is the worst identity to bring on through a loss, through a separation or grief. I don't want to be a victim through this season. So many lovely people have reached out to me and Landon and been so kind and so gracious and bombarded us with kind notes and gifts and cards, and even as recent as last week, a kind friend from college student, sent us a little cash gift and meant so much to me. But at some point, I don't want to be known as the victim. I want to shake that identity, and I just want to challenge you that whatever loss that you've experienced, be careful not to take on that identity. You remember there was two ladies in the Bible, Naomi and Ruth, and they both happened to go through similar things. Naomi lost a little bit more because she lost 2 sons and a husband, but Ruth lost her husband. But do you remember when Naomi came back and people started to recognize her in Bethlehem? They started to call her Naomi, and she said, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara," and basically saying, "I'm bitter." And she was taking her losses and making it her new identity. And here you had Ruth that realized that her loss was just a temporary season, and she was open to a new identity, a new possibilities. It's amazing how the Lord blessed her with a great husband, Boaz, and a great future. And so be careful of taking on these losses as your new identity. Definitely when you do that, you put your life on hold. So we don't want to do that. So I want to just give you some practical things that maybe have helped me with this issue of a new identity and embracing a new identity and creating one. First of all, I want to say, embrace the new identity. Embrace the new identity that God has given you. I can't go back and change things. Trust me, if I could, I would. If I could go back and undo the last year and a half, 2 years of cancer and the cancer journey, I would, but I can't. I was actually reading this morning a great passage in the Bible. If you want to read a great story, Jeremiah 29. It's a great story of how God had sent some of the Israelites into captivity up to Babylon with King Nebuchadnezzar. And Jeremiah wrote them a letter. And in that letter, he basically was saying this: you're not coming back. This captivity is going to be at least for 70 years. And many of you will actually die in that land. And here's what he told them to do. He told them to plant roots. He told them to establish themselves. He told them to pray for peace. He told them, basically what he was telling is, embrace this new situation. And all of us have two options. We can cry about the past. We can cry about what we lost. We can cry about the relationship we lost. We can cry about the situation we lost. We can go back and just wallow in that, or we can embrace the new situation and say, I can't go back and change the past, but I'm going to do the best I can with the new future God has given me, this new identity that God has given you. I want to say a couple things about that. Accept it. Frankly, not accepting is not going to change anything. So accept it. Accept that this is what has happened. Accept that I'm going to have to make a new path, a new future. Not only accept it, but there's the most important part of it. And here's where we fail. Commit to making the best of this situation. Commit to making the best of this situation. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm a single father with a 5-year-old who wakes up every morning at 6:30 and has the energy of 10 freight trains. And I, quite frankly, don't have that. But right now, I'm learning how to be the dad of a 5-year-old. I'm packing lunches. I'm calling the school, making sure that he goes to the cafeteria when he doesn't have his lunch. I'm shopping for blue jeans for him. I'm doing things I never. But here's the thing about it. I've covenanted with God, and I've said I'm gonna make the best of this situation. And though we miss my wife, man, we miss Karen dearly. In some sense, we're having fun. Me and him are having fun because I'm not going to wallow in the past. I've accepted this, and I've also committed to making the best out of this situation. How long will it last? I don't know. I don't know how long we'll be this way. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I can embrace this by committing to it. And then not only accept this and commit to it, but trust that God is going to do good. Trust that God is going to do good. And that's what I'm doing right now too in this season. I am trusting that this new identity that God is helping me create is going to be good. And he's going to do good to me. I'm not trying to preach a prosperity type of gospel or anything like that, but I trust that this new identity that God is trying to give me and create is going to be a good one. And I want to say that for you too. You need to trust that whatever you've lost, and it's funny, I think it's in that Jeremiah 29. It's in that chapter. The verse we always quote, for I know my thoughts towards you, they're good thoughts and so forth. That verse there, that's all in the context of this new identity of they're going to be in Babylon and not coming back. Think about that. So God says, whenever I give you a new identity, you got to trust me that it'll be a good one, and there's good things to come. And so all right. So I want to talk about creating a new identity in the moments that I have left. Creating a new identity, and I want to say this could be exciting. This new identity that you are forced to create, you didn't ask for it in many cases. Many cases, you weren't the one that filed for divorce. In many cases, you weren't the one that was the cause of this separation. Many cases, you weren't the one that caused this death or this grief. But here's where you're at now. You have this new situation, and you're going to be forging a new identity. But think about this. This could be exciting. It could be exciting because you have the chance to reinvent yourself. It's one of the reasons why we like Halloween so much. I know I just stepped on the taboo there, Halloween, but people like to dress up, and people like to put on costumes and be different people, because sometimes it's just we become bored with who we are and we want to be somebody else. And God has given us a unique opportunity sometimes when we suffer grief and loss and we suffer trauma. He has given us a unique opportunity to reinvent ourselves. I can't think of the one of the great broadcasters. I think is Walsh was his last name, but he had a son named Adam who was taken from him and kidnapped or murdered and disappeared. Actually, he was shopping in a store. It's funny how that man took that loss, and from that he reinvented himself. And though you could never bring that child back, he used that loss to help other people find missing children for years. He had one of the top shows on television helping other people find their missing family members and so forth, and all because of this reinventing. So let me just give you some thoughts on how we create a new identity. How do we do this? Well, first of all, if you're going to have this new identity that we're bringing on, the first thing I think you want to do is you want to commit to healing from your loss. You want to commit to healing from your loss. And that's in many ways, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Personally, I'm doing everything I can to heal from the loss. What we don't want to do is we don't want to take unnecessary wounds into our new identities. We don't want to take unnecessary baggage into trauma, loss, and grief will always be a part of us to some degree. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to take these wounds and these negative attributes and negative tendencies into this new identity. So commit to healing from your loss. In many cases, some of us have never talked about our loss with anybody. You can't forge a new identity without dealing with that loss. In many cases, many of us have never really sought help for that. In some cases, some of us have never grieved the loss. I remember even as a young man, I was thinking about this actually before I came on the podcast today. I remember as a young man, one of my mentors who really meant so much to me and was so instrumental in my life, and walked out on the ministry, walked out on many of us that were his proteges and that he had developed. And I remember not too long after he left, I remember sitting in a truck and I had my hands over the wheel, and I remember burying my head in that wheel and just crying and weeping and weeping and weeping and weeping. And after I wept for a while, I tried to process it. What was I actually crying about? Was I crying about the situation? Was I crying about him? Here was the bottom line. After I processed it, I was grieving in many ways the loss of my youth. I had given, and it was my choice, but I'd given this man, this movement that I was in, this situation I was in my life. And I felt like I had lost a lot of my youth, but I grieved it. But I'm so glad that I did. I'm glad that I grieved it because I was able to move on to the next chapter of my life and a new identity. And God has given me several identities over the years, but it was necessary to grieve that and not bring it into the present. And I want to encourage you, whatever loss you've had, deal with it, heal from it. It's difficult to forge a new identity, a healthy identity, if you haven't committed to healing from your loss. Secondly, commit to rediscovering you. Commit to rediscovering you. One of the things that in this last year, frankly, that in many ways has been a little bit of a blessing, and again, being as open as I can be, is I've rediscovered a lot of things about myself. When you're married, you have another partner with you, and you're bogged down with the pressures of time and money that you have to come up with, and then there's continuing the relationship and building that relationship. You don't have a lot of time for self-discovery and self-reflection. But in the last 9 months, it's been amazing how I've been able to rediscover a lot of things that I had forgotten about myself. A lot of likes, a lot of dislikes. It's amazing how many times we kind of curb our dislikes and our likes to kind of to fit our partner and to make a relationship work, and we should. But when we're alone again, we start to figure out things that, man, I kind of really like that. That's been put on the table for a while, and it's one of the beautiful things about recovering from loss is you're able to rediscover yourself again. I want to encourage you, commit to rediscovering yourself. Discover your likes and your dislikes, your passions. And that's one of the things that's been so beautiful about this time even, is I'm discovering some of the passions that I have, some of the things that ignite me, some of the things that fire me up. I'm rekindling these things, and it's been a beautiful process. Commit to rediscovering you. What puts a smile on your face? Many of us have been, again, so busy that we have forgotten about this. So first of all, I said, Commit to healing from your loss. Commit to rediscovering you. And then commit to reconnecting. Commit to reconnecting. Many times loss gives us a chance to bring old and new relationships into our life. Again, not downing marriage at all. I had a wonderful marriage, a beautiful marriage. But as you all know, when your spouse is your primary, the primary person you're looking at and focusing on, a lot of the other relationships kind of go by the wayside. Can I tell you, reconnect with those after a loss. After a loss, reconnect with relationships because they give you a chance to heal in many ways. But connections help us find out more about ourselves, and they give us people to help show us the way or encourage us. There's going to be people that God is going to use after your loss to help you heal from the loss, and then also help show you the way and point you in the way. And so I want to encourage you to commit to reconnecting. Next, commit to discovering or rediscovering how you add value. And that's so important when you're forging a new identity is how do I commit value? What do I bring to the table? In some cases, an honest search will make you realize you need help, training, and education to get the value you want and what you're looking for. So I want to encourage you, commit to discovering and asking one simple question. When you're trying to find out what's this new identity that I'm going to need going forward, ask yourself one simple question. How do I add value? Where do I add value? And that's really what I'm in the process of doing now, even in these months. And it's probably one of the reasons why I'm doing these podcasts and writing and trying to do some teaching, because it's the answer to the question I've been asking. How do I add value? And maybe you're saying, oh, you're not adding much value to me right now. Well, that's fine. But in my mind, this is the way I add value, and it's helping me create and forge a new identity. That's what we all need. And then finally, commit to seeking help from God, asking this simple question: what does the next act look like? Maybe right now you're bewildered, and you're just from every angle you're asking, who am I? What's my identity? Who am I? Where do I belong? Commit to asking that one simple question of God: what does the next act look like? And I'm joining you on that, because that's something that I've been doing. I've been asking the Lord to show me what the next step looks like, what the next phase look like. I want to say just a few more things, and we're almost done. I appreciate you joining me today. But while you search for your identity, don't pull down someone else's. One of the things we do when we're not sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're at where we're supposed to be at, we are the person we're supposed to be, when we're puzzled and kind of going in circles about the answers to those questions, the easiest thing to do is to pull down those who have found their identity. It's easy to pull down a mom who has found her calling and has children and is developing those children and showing the way. The easiest thing to do if you're struggling with your identity is to pull down somebody else's and to try to topple them. A simple prayer that we all ought to have is, Lord, allow me to truly be happy when good things happen to people I love. And that's a prayer that I've tried to pray, is just help me to be happy. Then the last thing that I want to mention today is this. The most secure identity you'll ever have, when you're apart from any other thing you are here on earth, the most secure identity you'll ever have is that of a child of God. 1 John 3:1 says, behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. One of the reasons why I can hold it together while I'm trying to discover my new identity. Who am I without Karen? Who am I going forward? One of the reasons I haven't lost my mind is because there is one relationship that has brought me great security. Above all things, I am a child of God. If you don't know that, I know there's a lot of friends I have here on Facebook that you wouldn't call yourself religious. That's fine. But maybe you just doesn't seem like you can ever have a sure foundation. It seems like every step you take is just on a wobbly foundation. I encourage you to really explore what Jesus said. Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life. One of the things that you can do is you can become a child of God through Jesus Christ and have that sure security. Maybe you've done that. Maybe you know, hey, I'm saved. I'm born again. You use all whatever terms you want to use, but you would say, but I'm still looking for that identity. I understand that, but be confident in knowing that you have the greatest security of all. You're a child of God. You're His, and because you're His, you're not alone, and because you're His, you're loved, and because you're His, you can rest assured that He will guide you on the path that you need to go, and He will help you find the identity He has called you to be. So just some thoughts today on recapturing your identity. Like I said, I never knew how much when you experience grief or loss, how sometimes you just spend a lot of time trying to figure out that question, who am I now? That identity. So I pray that you'd go back, maybe listen to this podcast, and listen to some ideas on how to recapture. I'll just share those 5 I gave you. Commit to healing from your loss. Commit to rediscovering you. This is a good time to find out who you are. Commit to reconnecting to others. Commit to discovering how you add value. And then commit to seeking help from God by asking this simple question: what does the next act look like? Hey, I encourage you, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, put them on this video. Stick with me over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to keep sharing things, but I'm going to try to invite some guests on that have had some difficult blows in life and have used their tears as wells to encourage others and to help others along the way. Hope you have a great week, and until next Thursday, right at noon, I look forward to seeing you. This is Danny Mendez. God bless you and have a wonderful day.